Metroid is back, and in a very big way. Nintendo is currently plotting out a Metroid Prime 4, and a remake of Metroid 2 is but months away. Among all the excitement, there is something here of historical interest to people like myself that you may have missed. The developer of the Metroid 2 reimagining for 3DS, Metroid Samus Returns, is Mercury Steam. Mercury Steam is the company responsible for Castlevania Lords of Shadow 1 and 2, as well as Mirror of Fate, another 3DS game. Why is this significant? The answer involves a 2-year-old video on this very YouTube channel. In August 2015, I did a report for Nintendo Life revealing that Mercury Steam had been trying to get a new Metroid game into development. According to my sources at the studio, they'd been producing prototypes for a potential game and pitching to Nintendo. They wanted to get new Metroid games into development for both Wii U and 3DS, Nintendo's two platforms at the time. Their main concept was for a first-person Metroid, not too dissimilar from Metroid Prime. It was supposed to be set on a ravaged post-apocalyptic world. The player would explore the planet as either the usual main protagonist Samus or one of 6 other original characters. These were said to be other bounty hunters like her, a premise that bears similarities to the DS game Metroid Prime Hunters. As I was compiling this information, my sources for the game went quiet, and at the time I wasn't able to account for that. There were contrasting rumours about whether or not the pitch had been turned down. After that, the trail on Mercury Steam's Metroid went cold. It wasn't clear what had happened to it. There was no news about the project until just over a year later when Mercury Steam's co-founder Enric Alvarez acknowledged the story in an interview with Eurogamer. He described my report as bullshit and claimed that it was a fabrication based upon comments he had made about wanting to do a Metroid game from an earlier date. He made out that the entire thing was untrue, or as he put it, pure invention. I'm not sure why Alvarez did this, but the indirect outcome of his words for me was days of being harassed about it on social media. This wasn't helped by big sites running his word as indisputable fact, suggesting that my report was nonsense, just some rumour that had gotten out of hand. It didn't matter that multiple people in the Spanish game development community came out publicly to back our report on Twitter. After we posted the original article, Nintendo Life even stumbled upon an old 4chan thread from an anonymous source involved with Mercury Steam that made very similar claims to the ones we were making before we had published them. Regardless, I stood by what we had said, and I did my best to continue researching it. About 9 months later, I had multiple people come forward to tell me on Twitter that Mercury Steam was really still doing a Metroid, but I honestly wasn't sure what to make of it at the time. Now we know, however, that these rumours were true. It has been announced that Mercury Steam is indeed involved with Metroid on 3DS. With it being official now, I wanted to look back and see if we could find out what happened here, what became of Mercury Steam's original pitch to Nintendo. According to the game's producer Yoshio Sakamoto, work on Metroid Samus Returns began about 2 years ago. This places the start of development around the time I released my first video on the old Mercury Steam prototype. I got back in touch with some of the same people I spoke to for that video to follow up on what happened back then, now that the 3DS game is official. According to them, Nintendo showed great interest in Mercury Steam during their early talks and the creation of the prototype. Ultimately, however, they weren't able to sell them on their original concept for a Metroid. Mercury Steam wanted to do a main home console game that would be a first-person shooter stroke adventure, as well as a companion game for 3DS. Nintendo was not interested in developing one for Wii U. One developer recalled being told that Wii U was off the table altogether, but they were open to pursuing a potential 3DS game. They weren't, however, interested in any of Mercury Steam's original ideas. One source told me the meeting was rough for Mercury Steam and said it was a pride-damaging experience for their management. Perhaps this is what Sakamoto was referring to in a recent interview with GameSpot. He said that prior to Mercury Steam working out a deal to remake Metroid 2, there was a very fateful meeting, in his words. It might also be worth noting that the interviewer did push Sakamoto on whether or not there had been ideas for an original Metroid game, but he seemed to sidestep the question in his answer. Since Nintendo wasn't taken with any of their original ideas, Mercury Steam apparently then began exploring the possibility of doing a remake of one of the classic 2D Metroids. Among those talked about, apparently, was Super Metroid. These suggestions are seemingly backed up again by the words of Yoshio Sakamoto. Sakamoto. In another interview conducted by the good folks of IGN, he said that Samus Returns came about when Mercury Steam had been in talks with Nintendo to work on Metroid, in particular a remake of some kind. About the time I was looking at the 3DS and the great specs and this game and the features that it offered, and was thinking to myself, man, maybe this is the time to revisit that 2D Metroid game, I had heard that Mercury Steam was interested in working on some sort of Metroid remake. Not two, but they had some interest, and those just sort of overlapped with each other. As for what became of Mercury Steam's original concept for a Wii U Metroid, it may not have been scrapped completely. There's a chance that some of it at least might have survived. In my original video, I did mention that I was told that Mercury Steam had been considering retrofitting their Metroid Wii U ideas into an original IP, should Nintendo turn down their pitch. They had spent a fair degree of resources developing their prototypes for it, and were determined to make the game happen, preventing their efforts from being in vain. Shortly after the Metroid Wii U game is said to have been turned down, Mercury Steam put out a teaser for a new original property on their website. It showed art of a man sitting in the cockpit of a spaceship. This was later revealed to be Raiders of the Broken Planet, a sci-fi themed third-person action shooter. It revolves around a lineup of bounty hunter characters named Raiders, who have travelled to the titular Broken Planet in search of an invaluable energy source known as the Aleph. There are distinct similarities between their Metroid game pitch and Raiders of the Broken Planet, but I wasn't content with making any assumptions. The game, after all, is a third-person shooter, not a first-person one like the alleged proposed Metroid Wii U title. Having said that, there does appear to be a connection between the two. I was told by two sources that the two projects share DNA. The Metroid Wii U pitch was supposedly an attempt to repurpose ideas they had been developing for a pre-existing original game and pitch it as a Metroid for Wii U. This would have helped to alleviate some of the financial and marketing challenges of launching an original property from scratch. When it was allegedly rejected by Nintendo as a potential Metroid game, Raiders of the Broken Planet continued as a new IP. It's set to launch in 2017 on Xbox One, PS4 and PC. Metroid Samus Returns hits 3DS on September 15th, 2017. For more videos uncovering lost video games, be sure to subscribe and check out my channel. For extra content and to see these videos early, you can support me on Patreon from as little as $1 a month. Thanks for watching.